Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Susan Merlo, distribution marketing expert and the author of The Digital Distributor. I had a great conversation with Susan, and some of the things that I took away from our discussion were that these e-commerce packages that we all invested in, distributors really got in and said, boy, if I build this really cool Amazon-like experience, they will come and they will buy things. And yes, it's gotten a little ways down the line, but I think most distributors are disappointed with some of the returns that they've had for the amount of money they've invested in these sophisticated e-commerce packages. And they've dabbled in CRM. They just don't really know how to bring the whole thing together. What I was excited about in our conversation is that she's really taken this original e-commerce idea and the sales relationships that have been built in these distributorships over the years and figured out, how do I marry those together so that I can take that data and now really move that e-commerce strategy and move that digital marketing strategy to the next level. And I think that's really what the distributors are looking for these days is, what is that missing link? What is the thing that's going to take the e-commerce pretty picture to, man, we're going to drive some revenue through this thing. And that's really where she comes into play. And she talks about very practical ways to do this. And it was, again, just such a pleasure listening to her, listening to her wisdom, going through this experience and how to work with the distributor and kind of help them bridge the gap. Where does CRM fit in this thing? And really, what are the digital assets we have today? And how do I use them to the best of their advantage? I absolutely love this because I know that a lot of distribution groups I work with and speak with are struggling to find that answer. What is that missing link? What is the catalyst that is going to take this e-commerce investment and push it to the next level? That's what we talked about, and I hope you enjoy the interview. This episode is brought to you by Connected Peers, an online peer collaboration platform for distribution professionals. Let's face it, most managers don't have the opportunity to speak with their industry peers about common challenges in their departments. Sure, they might see each other at an annual conference, but that hardly provides any real relationship building or continuity. What if there was a forum to solve challenges with those in your same role? Well, now there is. The concept is simple. Purchasing managers meeting with purchasing managers, training managers meeting with training managers, marketing managers meeting with marketing managers. You get the idea. There are 10 unique role-based communities to choose from. These are monthly, facilitated meetings all via Zoom. Ask questions and receive feedback from people who understand the challenges of your position. Isn't it time that you quit going it alone? To learn more and find your peers, visit us at www.connectedpeers.com. Well, hello, Susan. Welcome to Distribution Talk.
Hello, Jason. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Oh, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on with me and share a little bit with our listeners about who you are and what you do. And if you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit about your history, where you started, how you got involved with distribution, and the bumpy road that probably ensued.
Yeah, it's been a road with some big bumps. Like a lot of people, I started my career in corporate, started out as a secretary, worked my way through the company, became HR person, generalist, I guess is what you would call it. At some point, I decided to have a baby. I was a big planner. So I thought, this would be a good time. So talked to my partner, we should have a baby or adopt. And we had my son, and I never looked back. I never went back to corporate. While I was out on maternity leave, I started my first business, which was an e-commerce business. And not to date myself, but this was before we had Walmart.com and Target.com where they were actually selling things. So stores like mine were the only places to buy online. And I would go and run to these stores, Walmart, Kohl's, and I was selling kitchen appliances. And then I went to high-end juicers, much more lucrative, until the market took over. I got pushed out. So from there, I didn't want to go back to corporate. I enjoyed working on computers, so I started doing marketing, started building websites, and then social media came along. Again, I'm dating myself. And one day, I got a call from Randy McLean from Waypoint Analytics. I had no idea about analytics, distribution, nothing. To me, everything was investment banking, lawyers, because I always worked in investment banking or in a law firm, or local business, which is what I was doing at the time.
Right.
Someone had recommended me to him. He called, he asked me to take a look at what they were doing and would I be interested in working with him? And I said, no, it doesn't sound like something I'd be interested in at all. And he's like, oh, this would be a great opportunity for you. This industry needs you so bad. So he asked me what I made the previous month. And, me being an entrepreneur did not make much. I think it was about $2,500 for the month. And he said, if I send you a check right now, I'll FedEx it to you. You'll have it tomorrow. It'll be for $2,500 and I'll pay you that every month to come and work for me. And that was it. I had no choice but to join the distribution industry. And at first it was a big learning curve for me.
He and Bruce were kind of the first ones in the game in that analytics side, customer analytics. I mean, that was really, I remember when they came in and I had probably a similar conversation with Randy, although he didn't offer any money. I guess maybe he didn't like me as much, but no, I had a similar conversation. We talked a little bit about what they were up to and it was like, man, this is going to be pretty big, the analytics side of this. So absolutely.
He built an amazing tool. He was always showing us and teaching me and the other people on the team. There was so much to learn. It was fascinating. What I didn't understand at the time, I would say to him, he'd say, oh, well, businesses cost to serve. They want to lower their cost to serve and improve their, revenue. I'm like, well, why do they need you to tell them that? Why don't they just do it? Little did I know 50,000 products and stuff like that came into play. So yeah. And then I got into the marketing for this because Randy and his wife, Diane, they would put on this APIC conference every 6 months. And he would say to me, you really should go up there because distributors need what you do, digital marketing. So the first time he asked me, I said no, I was not ready. But the second, third, fourth time I did speak. And when I spoke from the stage, people would really want to do what I was talking about. And that is how I started taking on distributors as clients, taking on other distribution consultants as clients. Little did I know, though, because I didn't know the distribution business, I knew the marketing business. I didn't realize at the time that distribution is really more face-to-face. They're not big into marketing. And I didn't understand that. And I would say, well, don't you want to do this? And they'd say, yeah, we'd love to, but we have to go and sell now. So hold that thought.
Thank you for the suggestion, but we have to sell.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. That's an interesting point because when I was growing up in my business, in my family business, sales and marketing were really one thing. And it was said in the same breath, where today, many of us have come to the understanding that they are two very separate disciplines. But I will still say in many companies, you still see a sales and marketing department, which drives me crazy, by the way, just absolutely drives you crazy. But I think your point is very well taken. We always grew up that it was a face-to-face handshake relationship business. It'll never change from that. And I think that was the Achilles heel of the distributor, these privately held distributorships getting into that business.
It's true. I'm very old school. So I'm a big believer in face-to-face sales and not having to do business on the internet. But I mean, it is what it is now. And it's sad to watch some of the different verticals are really having a hard time. Others are doing fine. Others, like I have a client who's in the building products industry, and their customers complain that they don't see their salespeople often enough. So it's like the exact opposite.
Yeah, that's funny. So many of them complain that they have too many of them knocking on the door, and then it's like they don't get to see them. Well, I think honestly, I guess my question for you would be, is that a nuance in the vertical, or is it a generational difference?
Well, I think generational plays a part across the board, but the go-to-market strategy is going to be different from vertical to vertical, depending on who the customer is. Now, when you're talking about building supplies, of course, their customers are dealers. When you're talking about maybe plumbing supplies or electrical supplies, their customers are builders, large and small, commercial and residential, totally different buying cycle, totally
Mm-hmm.
different go to market.
Very true.
So just like the sales process is different, the marketing has to be different as well, which is not happening yet, but I'm hoping to get there. They're still doing traditional. A lot of distributors are still doing very traditional marketing or digital in a traditional way, which, baby steps.
For sure. No, for sure. I mean, and I think, that leap from that first web page, that first informational based web page didn't really do a darn thing. And slowly but surely, they figured out they could actually sell something on that and have a very rudimentary e-commerce, maybe a shopping cart or something of that nature. No idea what to price it at, but here it is. Here's what we go. And now a lot of them really pouring some very large investments in these e-commerce platforms. And really, a lot of them are getting smarter. But to your point, I think that there is still this tremendous gap of where they could be versus where they are today.
There is a huge gap. And what I'm trying to get across, and I'm still figuring out how to communicate this message, is that it's not about e-commerce at all, at all. Don't try to compete on e-commerce. Try to compete on your solutions, your value as a partner with the business. What are you bringing to the customer? How are you lifting the customer's business? Let's talk about that on your website and write about that. Let's write articles about that. Let's talk about success stories and how you helped all these other businesses. I think that because that's not been done in distribution yet, unless they hear it coming from me, like maybe on this podcast or they read an article that I write, they don't even know that the opportunity exists.
Right. Looking at what others have done, they're saying, some of these large e-commerce platforms, even looking at Amazon, but coming back down to a Granger, for example, or, something, and I shouldn't say coming down to a Granger, that's silly, because that's a very big, that's a big deal there. But I guess my point is that they see these and say, oh, okay, so really it's all about PIM data, product information, marketing data, and I got to present this in a pretty way. And when I do that, then my customers will really like it. I think that's where the mentality is, that that's what they have to emulate. They have to follow what they see and how they shop as a person when they are shopping online. I mean, we just ran through the holiday season. So many people that, I had so many friends that said, I didn't step foot in a store, which I think is sad, but it is what it is. That's what I think that a lot of distributors feel is the e-commerce strategy. That's the direction they have to go, where you're telling us that really it's not about that.
I mean, they have to do what they have to do with e-commerce.
Correct.
There are customers that want it, so you have to present it. But if you give them more than an Amazon experience or a Granger experience and you bring more to the table, like the consultative value that you bring, the partnership, then you're not competing apples to apples. Because if you compete with Grainger apples to apples or Amazon apples to apples, you're going to lose every time.
You
You
will
just
lose.
cannot.
Absolutely.
These guys have money to burn. But
Right.
if you can just give the customer what they want. If they want to buy their products from Grainger, fine. When they're going to need a project manager or something like that, then they're going to come to you to manage the project, to put together the whole purchase order and all of that. Distributors have to think out of the box to just keep their customers happy. I'm just finishing up a white paper that I wrote for MDM. It's going to come out in the next couple of weeks. And it's based on an article that came out from McKinsey in November. And basically what McKinsey said is customer loyalty depends on how indispensable you are. That's what it's going to come down to this year and going forward. Not how much do we like you or do we have loyalty. Loyalty is a very strong motivator for someone to stay with you, but you want it to be more than that. You want to be indispensable. And that's why I constantly say you have to become their partner. You have to make that message sound like they can't do business without you. And when they are with you, you have to be the only one in the room and make them feel valued.
When you're thinking about crafting your messaging, I think a lot of us, again, those of us of my vintage, think that we have to delegate this activity to someone of a younger generation because they understand technology, they understand maybe social media better than we do, they understand some of the branding better than we do. But I think if in a previous conversation, I talked about that really they need the strategy side of it. They need the wisdom, the people who have kind of been through the trenches to bring that whole thing together.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wrote my book, because the book is a system for that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that salespeople have to go onto the internet and add information because they know what to add. Let me turn this a little bit on its side.
Okay.
When a salesperson walks into, say you're an electrical supplier, and you have customers that are small residential contractors, and you have customers that are institutions like universities and hospitals, right? The salesperson goes to see the contractor and he has a certain dialogue with that contractor. And he knows, because he's a salesperson, he knows what that guy needs. He knows it. He's known him for years. And when he goes to the hospital administrator or the buyer over there, it's the same situation. He may be selling the same products, but it's an entirely different conversation. All right. Now, a couple of things are at play here. One is if your salesperson can't get in to see the customers, but you know the customers are coming to your website has to have those conversations with those customers. And so it's got to be customer centric. The contractors have to know where to go to find the information they need. The buyers from the institutions have to find the information they need. And it doesn't usually start at your homepage. It usually starts with Google. What is the hospital administrator searching on? Lighting that does this, that, and the other thing. You want your distribution company to come up when someone's searching on that. And that's why content marketing is such a big deal. Now, the other thing is, since the salespeople can't get out to see customers, let's just say they can't for whatever reason, either the customers don't want to see them or they're spread too thin or whatever, you still want new business for your company. The new business now, a lot of distributors are doing their digital transformation, so it's changing. But for the most part, what I was seeing is things like you have a newsletter. Subscribe to our newsletter. A customer or a prospect would subscribe to the newsletter and that lead would get passed to sales. Well, that's not a sales ready lead. It's just somebody that wants a newsletter. They don't really want to buy some big piece of equipment. You don't even know what company they're from half the time because they're using their Gmail. That's not good. But what's really exciting and what gets me excited is it doesn't have to be that way. What I talk about in my book is let's get those leads, let's run them through a vetting process that's all automated. And then if they click on the right things, if they download the right things, if you can pinpoint what they're interested in, then give them to a salesperson. And that's where the solutions come in. Because anyone can look at a product and people are going to come in, they're going to showroom you maybe from the lowest cost. But if they're looking for a service, say they're looking for vendor managed inventory, and they come to your page, they look at your services, they click, then they download a white paper about that, and then they read more, and you have marketing automation in place and a CRM, that path all gets caught up into your CRM. And when it hits a certain threshold, when that buyer or that prospect hits a certain score, a lead score, we call it, then it gets passed to sales. And then sales gets the record and says, oh, look at this guy. He went to our homepage, then he clicked on services, then he clicked on VMI, and then he downloaded 3 white papers about VMI. Gee, I wonder if he's interested in VMI. Maybe I'll give him a call.
Right. Right.
And the thing that's really cool about this is if what I'm saying excites anybody, I would be really remiss if I didn't say this. And that is for the salespeople that don't put their leads in the CRM, and those leads that they're not putting in the CRM are moving around on their website. When they finally put those leads in, you'll catch all of the history, every piece of history like back for as long as you had that marketing automation system, because it goes to the IP address. And so if you've been holding a lead and, it's still cold, put it in your CRM. Let's see if he's really like bouncing around your website and looking at things and maybe then leaving and going to a competitor. You don't want that to happen. So you can't get that benefit of the lead scoring, of the lead warming it up, moving from marketing qualified to sales qualified. You can't do that if your leads are not in the CRM.
This has been one of the biggest struggles, honestly, with clients I've worked with and groups I facilitate. Is sales managers always talk about the reluctance of salespeople to use that CRM tool and the implementation and utilization. And you're right. I mean, if they refuse to use that, they'll never get the big benefit that you're talking about. Sadly, I've been around lead qualification and funneling and that whole Marketo universe and all of that for a long time. My wife is very involved with that world to the point that she and a couple other people actually attempted to start a funneling software. But there's some great tools out there, fantastic tools. And I think that one of the biggest barriers, and you please let me know if you agree or disagree on this, is that people feel like that is for the big kids, that lead qualifying and that type of technology is for much larger entities. Hey, I'm just a privately held distributor. I've got half a dozen, maybe now a dozen locations. Is this stuff too big for me? I think that's the barrier.
You don't have to start with a Marketo.
Well, no, that's inexpensive. That's a big one.
That's the first thing. I have a client that wanted to go right to Marketo. They were using Constant Contact, and I'm like, well, I can't use Constant Contact. That's no good. But, well, wait, but there's more. There's more. I looked at Constant Contact after not having looked at it for like 5 years. I looked at it. Constant Contact is fine to get started with.
Interesting. Okay.
You have to use it the right way. And when it comes to, well, are we not big enough? I use marketing automation. Right now, my marketing automation is not as strong as when I was first starting out this business. But I can tell you that because of my marketing automation, I landed one of my clients came through an email I sent. He clicked the link in the email, went to my website. A notification popped up on my computer screen that said, this guy is on your website. I picked up the phone and called him right then and there. 6 figures later, here I am. So
fantastic.
Not too small. You're never too small. The risk versus reward, or the ROI, whatever you want to call it, very small compared to what you can gain. When I present I have an example in my presentation of a funnel that costs, I usually say it costs between $10,000 and $15,000 to build out its Marketo funnel. And the example I use, the fella's buying a $50,000 piece of equipment, and it's not a straight line journey. So there's stuff like that. There's stuff like that person's already your customer. He's buying conduit from you. Do you want him to buy wire as well? He might be shopping for wire. Do you want to know if he's shopping for wire? You're not going to know unless you put the marketing automation on your site and let the technology do the lead warm up and the testing of the lead. Take that off the salespeople's plates so that they can focus on leads that are ready to be closed.
I absolutely agree with you. I think that it is something that small to mid-sized distributors should really be able to take a look at. You've invested in a website, an e-commerce website, you're playing a little bit with SEO, you haven't kicked this up to the next gear. And there's only so much chugging you can go with the basics there. I mean, you can get some nice wins and you can get excited about it, and you can actually start getting a little better at Google AdWords and placement on search engines, things like that. But this is the whole nother level. This is the difference maker right here.
You have to come to a point where you're going to just have to cut bait and run. You're going to have to cut out the Google AdWords and actually start generating content. There is a very small distributor in Texas, some kind of industrial distributor. I don't even know what they sell, but I know one product that they sell. Anyhow, I came across this guy on LinkedIn. I'm like, who is this guy? He didn't look like the typical distributor on LinkedIn. Turns out he's from overseas somewhere. I can't remember where, but he bought this little distribution company. And this is how I found him. I was searching on a product, lap joint flanges. Do you know what that is?
I do not.
It's like a washer. The price of these lap joint flanges are anywhere from a couple of cents to a couple $100, right? So somehow I was searching on that for something I was writing. And this guy came up from Texas. It was this guy, Amazon, and Grainger in that order. Well, maybe no, Amazon and Grainger were up top because Amazon and Grainger paid to be up top. This guy was number 3 because 5 years ago, he put a video on his website of someone demonstrating how to use, like which lap joint flange to use for which, and it was like this cell phone video, shaky and all of that. To this day, that guy still comes up at the top. And meanwhile, and I checked this, Amazon and Grainger are paying 4 and change for each click to be up there. This guy's not paying a dime, and he's up there.
There's a lot of ways to bump that your listing and your ranking, up there. And I'm glad you mentioned that shaky video, because I've always been a huge advocate of the walk out in the warehouse, pick up an item, take out the cell phone, explain it in 30 seconds or less. Very similar to the Zappos. I love their little videos, and it's just some 20-something going out there, throwing a shoe up in the air and talking about the features and benefits in a very condensed manner. But I love that.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think distributors need to jump on. In fact, I had one client that's recently jumped on it, and I'm pretty excited about where they're going with this. So.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah. I mean, and that's what I mean about cut bait and run. You have to start somewhere. You have to draw that line and say, we start now. At first, it's not going to be easy, but you have to build up that content, build up that presence online, because eventually that's all it's going to be, is people looking on Google for what they need, and you want them to find you.
I know that salespeople actually, this often is a threat to them. Field salespeople they're often threatened by this type of technology and the investment of their company towards all the things that you and I have been talking about. How do we overcome that? How do we overcome that fear that they will essentially become displaced?
I think that the problem is, the reason that salespeople feel threatened is they think they're going to be displaced, lose their job. They're going to lose their leads. They're going to lose control of their leads. And what nobody tells them, because again, this is not how distributors think. It's not like, I mean, I know how a CRM works out of the gate and marketing automation out of the gate because it's been around for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. But if you're using your CRM as a glorified Rolodex, you're wasting your time, and they should be scared. But if you're using the CRM the way you're supposed to, where warm, hot leads are coming in and your marketing automation is actually tracking your customers, that's gold to a salesperson. When I do that presentation I talked about where I demonstrated Marketo, that lead that came in from that guy for the $50,000 piece of equipment, I ask people, is this a good lead? Would you, if this was your customer, wouldn't you want to know that he wants to buy this equipment? Well, unless you have your stuff in your CRM, you'll never know it unless he picks up the phone and calls, which a lot of them are not going to do. The example I used, the guy was shopping around at 10:30 at night. Who's he going to call?
Right. There are those, masochistic salespeople that leave their cell phone on and pick it up, but that's a dying breed. But I will say, and just something that occurred to me is maybe the fear, maybe one of the biggest fears is that field salespeople have always been the generator of that lead. They have always been the originator. And today that origination is shifting to another place, and that can be a little scary. So accepting the lead starting elsewhere, i.e. website, and coming through the funnel and being qualified and then dropping into their lap, that's not a comfortable position. It's just not something they've done in the past. So that may be something that's contributing to the fear. Haven't threaded that one through some of my sales managers yet. I may have to do that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, though. I mean, because really, again, field sales has always been the pinnacle position in a distributorship and has had a tremendous amount of power. And that's where we started all inquiries and things. And if that's shifting, that can be a little bit scary.
Yeah, I guess that would be because it's change. Nobody likes change. Change is very scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they look at it as just another foot in the door strategy, they still have to get their foot in that door. And I guess it depends on the salespeople. And to your point, it's going to always be the seasoned salespeople that feel threatened, not the new guys who, I hate to say this, but some salespeople don't like to sell, it seems, from what I hear, that they're called glorified order takers or whatever.
Correct.
And so there are programs in place for those salespeople, maybe inside salespeople, and then, they get certain screens that tell them upsell and all of that. And so this would be a good strategy for them. For the seasoned field sales, it's a big change. And I think it's necessary. It's not even innovation. It's just a change.
No, it's coaching. It's coaching. It is showing where this is not going to impact them. And really, at the end of the day, that their commissions will stay intact and those types of things. So I think there is some emotional coaching that needs to occur to help this go along. But if I could, I wanted to take a quick little say. You've mentioned the book a couple times, and I want to jump on it because really, that was really the catalyst for your program. The book is not the be-all, end-all. I guess that's the point I would try to make, is that it was really the catalyst for what you actually are doing today. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I wrote the book during COVID. Good opportunity to write the book. And the reason I wrote it is because, like I told you, at these APIC functions or anything else where I was speaking, podcasts like this, distributors would say, "Oh, Susan, we love what you're saying. We love the fact that we can get these really warm leads through the internet. Come and work with us and let's do it." And I would go and work with them. But again, they would say, "Oh, this is great, but we have to go and make sales now. So let's stick a pin in this and we'll come back to it later." That was happening a lot. In fact, it happened with every distributor I worked with, and rightly so. Sales are sales. You have to go if there's a sale to be made. So I thought, maybe if I can just explain it better and show people that this is a process and you have to take these steps for the process to work, that's why I wrote this book. And to tell you the truth, I didn't think that the book would be picked up because it had happened so many times with distributors where they would only get halfway through the process and take off that I thought, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. And so when I was shopping the book around, I sent it out to a bunch of people to get endorsed and things like that. And Mike Marks got a copy. I didn't know him at the time. And he called me immediately. He's like, "Oh, Susan, this is the missing link. This is what every distributor needs. These are the steps. This is it."
Gotta love Mike. Yeah.
Oh, man. I almost fell on the floor. I was like, really? I mean, I really thought I was going to push the book out and then actually, that's not true. What I wanted to do was to sell the books to trade associations and have trade associations give it to their members to get their members in tune with what's coming down the pike, so to speak, to know that, oh, we better start, moving on this because we have to get all of this in place. So MDM picked up the book. And once it was done, well, the book was done like a year and a half ago, but it didn't get published until November. So I had a lot of time on my hands and I thought, well, gosh, maybe someone would like a training program. Maybe it's too much. And that's where I put this whole digital distributor program together. And that's still being massaged into what I think would be a good offering to a distributor. I haven't figured that out 100% yet. Where right now it's in 3 different versions. The big version was, and that cart just closed, but it was a year-long version where they would get all these videos. They're all pre-recorded. They're all 2 and 3 minutes, and then meet with me every week to make sure the work's getting done and pick up any slack and that kind of thing. But I think a year long is a little bit too long.
It might be. And I think, weekly sometimes can be a little bit daunting. That might be a little much. But okay, so you found a couple other versions of this that may be a better fit.
Yeah. I mean, the best fit is the done for you services because a lot of distributors don't have a marketing team. They're going to need one. So what most of my clients, the way we contract and do business together is I go in, they have very small marketing team, one person usually.
Yeah.
And I just consult with them. We get everything set up. We help them hire their marketing team. I'll interview them. They'll interview them. We'll get them in place to the point where they're trained and then I exit. So it's usually like an 18-month stint and they pay me a retainer and everyone's happy. We get the people in place and trained up because, there's not a lot of alternatives out there. It's hard to find any marketers who do this in the distribution industry, from the distribution industry.
Right. They're generally homegrown.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're generally homegrown. Although I am seeing a few that are recruited outside, but then it's a struggle for that person to come from another environment to understand what first of all, what a distributor does for a living and how to navigate that very tight culture that has been built in these organizations. Sometimes it's hard to penetrate.
It really
can be
is.
very hard.
Yeah. I like to be able to interview the candidates and give them the lay of the land, so to speak, get them ready for the industry. Every once in a while, you get a resume that it's like, grab this guy, hire him, and then let's talk to him because he's just that great of a guy. We just did that with someone and he's already been promoted to marketing manager. You just knew the guy was going to be great, but that doesn't happen a lot. Another thing that happens too that's unfortunate is when you're going to put in digital marketing, when you're going to put that in place, that's more work for the marketing team. And if your marketing team is used to doing things like flyers and events and stuff, they still have to do that stuff, but they have a whole nother. So it makes sense to bring in new people and divide up the jobs according to people's unique abilities.
I have a relationship with one marketer. She's part of a group I facilitate and struggles because she is a team of one. And with an entity that's pretty darn big and growing rapidly. And I guess one of the biggest struggles, and maybe you can speak to this, is it would be great to add on people to do a lot of this. I mean, there's so much more that could be done, but the senior management is not ready to give up the purse strings to do this, not ready to invest. And I think, how do we get that senior leadership to say this is a worthwhile endeavor? This is where we should invest our money.
For anything like that to take place, senior management has to be on board. And when I talk to a company, when I talk to my prospects, I'm always talking to the CEO, no one else. I won't talk to the marketing director or the marketing manager because it's really that person's decision. It's usually the CEO and the VP of sales and marketing. So if you can show that the return on investment is worth it, then it really becomes a no-brainer. For instance, if you're going to build these sales funnels, say you build a sales funnel for a service that generates $200,000 a year, $100,000 a year, you spend $30,000 to build it. It's generating it every year. It doesn't change. It just gets better. Then you can duplicate it and put it in other places. It's worth the investment. Is it worth hiring a new person? Only if that person is really, really good. If they're not really, really good, I would say, no, outsource it. Send it to us. We'll do it. We know what we're doing. You have to have the right people, and you can't just hire them for the sake of hiring them.
Sure.
I think that at the end of the day, it's just CEOs and the upper management, they have to understand that they need to invest in digital marketing if they want to get the ROI from their tech investment. They want, the marketing automation and the CRM to pay for itself. They have to use it the way it's supposed to be used and not just as a glorified Rolodex.
Also, in order to get the return on investment from their e-commerce investment, I mean, that's the big thing. They've dropped a boatload of money into it, and they dabble in a lot of different ways to make it a bigger piece of their business. But this is that catalyst. This is the thing that is going to take it to really give them that return on investment. As you know, I mean, so many people during COVID threw money at their e-commerce. They all of a sudden realized, okay, either I've got to get in it or I've got to get better at it, one of the two. But there's only so far that can take them. And as you said, got to get away from the Google AdWords as the only way to do this. Figure out, how do I go to that next level and really figure out, how do I get a return on investment for the amount of money I'm throwing at this technology? Because it's a lot. It is a boatload of money is being thrown at technology today.
That's something that I don't know if you can hear it in my voice now, but when I came into the distribution industry, it was right after that time period where distributors just were putting their e-commerce systems in place. And all I kept thinking was, who sold them these platforms? Who told them that this was going to change your business? Because those guys, whoever it was, they were very bad people, very bad people. You have to look at it like this. You have to go to where the customer is. And if the customer is on Amazon all the time, unfortunately, that's where you have to be because that's where the customer is. If they're not coming to your e-commerce site, you can put a ton of money in there. And then you're going to spend a fortune on Google AdWords, and it's never going to end because as soon as you stop paying Google AdWords, you're gone and no one's coming to your site. It's a terrible, terrible cycle that most distributors should not be on, especially with all the marketplaces that are out there now. Put your stuff on a marketplace. At least they're getting traffic. One of my clients is on, I think it's called ThomasNet, and they get business from ThomasNet. But that's where the traffic is. People don't come to their website. And if they do, they come, they look, and they leave because the websites are not built to hold the customer. You're not capturing the contact information unless somebody buys something, and people are shopping around. You want that e-commerce site because customers expect it, but what's more important than the e-commerce site is the abilities behind it, the abilities to look at your invoices, look at your history, have your lists, all of that kind of stuff, communicate with your representatives over at the distributorship. That's what's more important than selling 50,000 products. It's a real sore point for me.
I can tell. Well, and again, people get sold things all the time. And yes, they might have been sold a bill of goods, but also they didn't realize what they needed to do to actually make this work.
That's the thing. And what gets my goat is there are people that have been working with distributors that have put these systems in place that should not have been putting them in place, and they would have known better. They should have known better. But when you're getting that affiliate fee from whoever it is that is putting it in, money's looking really good. And like I said, it can make me cry. It really could. They didn't have to spend all that money. They could have spent a fraction of it, put in big commerce, throw their top 1,000 products online, and worried about the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess one thing, how do people find you and how do they get working with you? I mean, we can sense the energy you have for this, for what's going on and really taking these folks kind of out of the e-commerce stone ages and kind of seeing where they can go. But how do they find you?
Well, the best way to find me is through our new website, thedigitaldistributor.com. Easy to remember. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, Susan Merlo. If they wanted to work with me, they could just call or email or get in touch with you. Mm-hmm. Working with me comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. It could be a phone call. Advice is free. Clearly, I love talking about this stuff, so I can talk about it all day long with anyone.
Yep.
I'm very passionate about it. And my only wish in this whole scheme of things is to make everything right. I want distributors to know what is out there for them to use, know the power of what they have. Because a lot of times these salespeople, whoever sold them Pardot or Marketo or Salesforce, they sell it and then they leave. I mean, even one of my own clients, I said to him, now that you've had Salesforce for 1.5 years, now we have to get you Pardot. Let's get that in there. He's like, oh, well, we've had it 1.5 years. We haven't used it yet. Well, I don't know how much Pardot is, like $2,500 a month. So in the great scheme of things, there's so many fires that CEOs and upper management have to put out. But if they just can get the ball rolling, which is why I built the Digital Distributor to be a year long. It's just little sound bites over the period of a year. It's like a roadmap. So I'm still figuring out the best way to get them to where they need to be.
Well, I think the flexibility is the right way to go. And definitely all of the things, the ways to reach you, we will put on the show notes and things like that. So people will be able to find you. And I think, again, your flexibility is the key. I mean, I've been around the advisory block for a long time now. And really, it's not a one size fits all. It just isn't. And if you want to be a very good advisor to these organizations, you're listening to their needs. And those needs will not be the same. Doesn't matter what vertical, doesn't matter if they live next door, they will not be the same. So you're right. It's going to be a flexible solution for these companies, but they really do need to take a look at where they're spending today and really, are they getting the return on investment that they should be?
Yeah, they will eventually.
I'd like to get them there sooner than later.
Well, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Let's make some money for them.
Sure, absolutely.
Some of them, it's just a matter of teaching their customers to use the e-commerce site and see the benefits there.
Yeah.
So yeah, different for different companies.
For sure. Well, Susan, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And, thank you for sharing this with us. I mean, this has been something that I think a lot of the listeners, are struggling with, absolutely struggling with. And hopefully they will reach out to you and get a little more information and move forward. But once again, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
All right. Take care.
All right. You too, Jason.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.